Alright, time to start filming. I deeply apologize for not making a video yesterday, but I missed that, so I'll make two today, and with that train, please be quiet. Regardless, back to the topic at hand. Let's talk about moral behavior and its value. Now, when I say moral behavior, I mean behavior that is considered moral or respectable, generally speaking. Some people would disagree with what is defined as moral, but generally speaking, certain things like not lying, not hurting someone unnecessarily, and generally being respectful to people would be considered moral behavior. So that is moral behavior. Now, what does that contribute to society? What is valuable about it? Well, let's start off with a simple one. It encourages trust. If people are behaving in a way that is considered moral, then people have reasons to trust. After all, if everyone's acting properly, why would you think someone's going to act improperly or betray that trust you invest in them? Because one of the big things with moral behavior is following your word or doing what is right, regardless of the situation. And so there's a reason to trust because, hey, people are sort of predictable, and you can safely predict that good things will come. You don't need to plan around, say, someone constantly scheming to do something stupid or dangerous. Furthermore, because of that increased trust, it strengthens the society around it and boosts cohesion. When everyone understands their morals and what is right and wrong and acts accordingly, well, people want to cooperate. They're willing to work together because they follow the same rules, they understand the same principles, and they hold them deeply to them. When you have a bunch of people acting immorally, it breaks that cohesion because everyone's going in their own way, and if everything is just a means to an end without any proper moral foundation, well then, why would you trust someone not to betray you at the last minute for their own interests? A society run on pure selfishness, without the concept of a greater whole, will suffer. Now, it's one thing, for example, to argue that the self benefits from others. They do, 100%. But the issue is when selfishness is purely individualistic and short term, which it oftentimes is with immoral behavior, then you create a problem because that benefit you get from selfishness basically goes away because people act in their own interests in the short term and thus damage the long term outlook of society as a whole. And as a result, cohesion fractures, and so you're left with a bunch of people squabbling like preschoolers over whatever they can get their hands on. And in the long run, moral behavior ensures the best outcomes for society. Think about it. If no one murders, let's say everyone adopts completely moral behavior, no murders happen, no adultery, no abuse, nothing. Would that not be the best outcome for a society? Everyone happy, in good relationships, having good families, working together, and developing over time as they experiment and further their interests, while acting morally. Would that not be the best society to see? It would. And the closer you get to that society, the better. Now, of course, there are some restraints on it, just on pragmatism. You can't act as if everyone's going to act in the way of the best outcome, so there must be some compromising there. But still, the more people act in a moral way, the better things usually are, unless said moral behavior is selfish and short-sighted. For example, if someone has what is called suicidal empathy. So if, let's take a murderer for example, you say, that murderer should be let free, we should show mercy to him, integrate them back into society. It is often called suicidal empathy for situations like that because you are quite literally helping someone who will destroy you. You're feeling empathetic for a person who will crush you under their heel without hesitation, and it creates problems. Essentially, when you act morally in the short term without thought to long-term consequences, it will often end up resulting in problems where essentially, oh no, I'm helping this person, they betray me, and now we're back to square one. Now, of course, if everyone acted morally, this wouldn't be a problem, and the short-sightedness would be fine because, well, you're not dealing with murders. You're not dealing with people taking advantage of trust. But as things stand, that exists. Those bad people do those things. And so, you have to have some restraint on your empathy and, to some extent, how you extend your morality. Should you act morally in 99% of cases? Yeah, you should. But there are that 1% of times you need to say, nope, nope, I am not going to show any moral sympathy to you because you are a bad person who will hurt me if I do. And so you have to cut it off. There are limits. But on the subject of limits and restraining oneself, by being moral, especially in the long term, it can promote restraint and allow for more disciplined and professional citizens. Think about it. When you think of short-term actions and immoral behavior, a lot of them go hand in hand. For example, stealing. Short-term, and it's immoral because you're taking from someone else. You take the fruits of someone else's labor, shove it in your own mouth or in your own pockets, and run away with it. One may argue, under certain circumstances, that it's understandable, but it is still an immoral action, irregardless of the initial intention, because it damages society as a whole and reduces trust. It's easy to say, on a short-term utilitarian level, if we just allow some theft, then people will be better off. But in the long term, based on finances and reality, no, we aren't. It is immoral behavior that damages people. But by having restraint and not doing those bad things, you are more disciplined and thus able to act more professionally, which generally encourages the above, but also makes it easier to do important things that are more difficult because you're restrained. You're used to doing things that you may not like or not doing things that you want to do that are damaging, and thus you can act appropriately in certain circumstances. It is just better for everyone and makes certain things more easy. And of course, friendships and interpersonal connections, so your relationships with others, are far easier when moral behavior is encouraged. After all, if you're acting morally, your friends are acting morally, everyone else you know is acting morally, well then, in such a case, it's a lot easier to trust and work together, and friendships thrive on that. All connections do. Whether it be boss and worker, student-teacher, friend and friend, lover and lover, regardless of what type of connection, they thrive when people are able to trust each other, when moral behavior is encouraged. That is an incredible benefit, and should not be understated. Because remember, what is society made of? Individuals. How do those individuals form society? These connections, these relationships with each other. I am me. You are you. But it is through our connections, however tenuous due to online interaction, that we form a society. Combine that with our in-person interactions, and you get a lot of people acting in certain ways, and thus a society. A general culture, general beliefs, general ideas, the spread of said ideas and their modification over time. From this is birthed society. And moral behavior ensures that society has a good situation around it, for which it can grow and strengthen itself. After all, if everyone's working together and cooperating, well then, things are a lot easier to handle, right? I mean, a culture doesn't need to be nearly as rough, and simultaneously, it makes functioning just a whole lot easier day to day, since you're not constantly having people distrusting each other for no reason. Instead, you have people trusting each other, with a small bit of distrust reserved purely on the situation being, well, unfortunate. Because let's face it, we aren't in a utopia, so there's still got to be some distrust just in case. But with what trust is given, and what moral behavior is engaged in, everyone profits. And so, moral behavior has its value. It benefits everyone. And so people should do it. Have a good one.